Well, hello everybody, and this is Weirdly Magical with Jen and Lou, and I am Lou. I am an astrologer, and this is
Jen, and I'm an Akashic healer.
Yay. And here we are with another episode of our podcast for you, where we're actually going to talk a little bit about, well, quite a lot, about some very powerful events that are happening. Well, Mars is stationing to go retrograde for a couple of months in actually about 30 minutes from us recording it at 2:05 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And I had to convert the time for a minute because I'm not in Pacific time. And and then tomorrow night at 10:53 p.m. Mountain Time or 9:53 p.m. Pacific Time, we have a full moon in Capricorn. So most of this podcast is going to be based around that. And let me just give a bit of technical details before we go into it. The Mars is stationing retrograde at 9 degrees of Aquarius, and the moon's nodes are at 6 degrees of Aquarius and Leo, and so Mars is conjunct the south node at 6 degrees of Aquarius. And interestingly, the USA's south node is at 6 degrees of Aquarius. So Mars is stationing retrograde conjunct the USA's own south node also. And the full moon in Capricorn tomorrow night is at 6 degrees of Capricorn conjunct Saturn, who is already retrograde. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the numbers. We're going to talk about the astrology, the aspects, what it might all mean for you. So do you want to kick us off with that, Jen?
Sure. I think the interesting thing here is we're starting off with Mars at 9 degrees and going retrograde. And 9 degrees is the number of endings. So it begins that energy of kind of remembering that we're ending something, we're changing, we're evolving, because the 9 is about evolving the ego or the idea of the smaller self into a more universal self, more recognition of the divine self, and the idea that we're all connected. And it's interesting that the south node is at 6 degrees right next to it, because 6 and 9, these are the emotional numbers. So it's there's that the 9 is universal love, or love for everything and everyone. 6 is family love, or love for your own environment, love for what you do. It's your service to the world. It is your connection to your immediate tribe. So there's that energy coming through that is the past, or whatever, something from the past that has angered us and we have not dealt with, that we haven't dealt with. Our fury is pulling us into action. So it feels to me very helpful, even though I know everyone says, or not everyone, but a lot of people say when Mars goes retrograde, fires people up. And really, we need to be fired up because this whole thing, I think this whole full moon is, and this time we're in, is about bringing us to our senses. Like, where are we focusing our anger? Why? Because a lot of us are angry because we still remember pain from the past. Like, I was wounded, my wound is still with me, I'm still angry. I want that wound or my anger to be honored, or paid attention, so it can be completed. So remember, we said the 9 is about the completion of old wounds. So I'm like, okay, I'm not angry that somebody else is different from me and owes me something, and I'm moving towards the light, right? The opposite of where can I find the light? Where can I find a different pattern The other thing I'll say about this that's really quite fascinating is this full moon is happening on the 28th. I know it's the 27th here in some of the Americas, but the rest of the world it's on the, and some of the Americas it's the 28th. So 28 is an interesting number, and it adds up to 10. 2 and 8 is 10, which is a 1, which is about forward movement. Remember that we're in an 11 universal year, 2 plus 1 plus 8. So 11, there's 2 ones there. It's a gateway. It's an entry where this whole year is about coming to terms with these issues, our wounds, turning this stuff into compost so we can move forward and see things more clearly.
Can I give you just one other interesting coincidence about these numbers? Mars will actually turn direct at 28 degrees Capricorn, which is a 28 one, on August the 27th, which is a 9.
Yeah. So there you go. So there's another completion, if you will, right? Very interesting. There's no errors in this thing. So fascinating.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Reminder. So the 27 is a 9. So we already have the 9 because Mars is 9. So we know there's a connection. So we have the 11, we have the 10, we have the 9. In actual fact, the universal date with the 28 is a 9. So we have the 9 on the 28th as well, which is fascinating. So we have, and we're in an 8 universal months. So, which is 17, it's an 8 universal months, which is about manifesting or making real. So we have 8, 9, 10, 11, all working on this this full moon, so we can see the connection. And when we're looking at that 8, 9, 10, 11, this is about really beginning. Like, I'm going to take ownership of my own leadership, whatever that means. I'm going to take the lead for me, for what I believe in. What is integrous to me as a being? What do I consider important? Where do I want to put my focus? That again is the Mars energy. Where do I want to put my focus? The Saturn, you know, with the moon right there. What do I want to do and make real? And what kind of emotional aspect or love will I bring into balance? You know, the selfish love, I don't care about anyone else, or that connection that I actually see the benefit. If I'm generous with others, I actually get more, right? So I take the lead in that way where I'm going, okay, well, there's only a limited amount of water, blah, blah, blah. Let's share what we have and create these incredibly strong connections. Because here we are, where the 11 comes to the 2, it's about connection. It's about bringing the divine into practical form. You can see how all these numbers are leading us into a new beginning. So to me, this full moon, which is at 6 degrees, which is the number of love. Remember, we talked about family love, your connection with that, your connection, your love of service, of being the true you, the abundant, benefic you. And in that same way, so you're having an option here.
And of course, the astrology kind of, without looking at the numbers, really speaks to all that as well. You know, that I've been talking about this South Node in Aquarius as because the South Node is a point of release. It's letting go. It's what we're moving away from. It's the past. And in Aquarius, it's this feeling of difference and alienation and disassociation, and of not realizing that we're really all connected. And it's about moving to the North Node in Leo, which is about being open-hearted and giving and receiving love. And you mentioned the word generosity. That's a very Leo word as well. You know, we're being invited and pulled towards that North Node. It's a conscious choice that we have to make. This is not just like something that's magically going to happen. We always have our free will. With that point will be triggered again by the 3 upcoming eclipses that we have, because eclipses are always full and new moons that take place near the moon's nodes. So this Aquarius Leo axis is being triggered again and again, and it actually started last August with that total eclipse that we had on August the 21st, right at what the moon's nodes move backwards, for anybody that doesn't understand the movement of the energies. And so that was kind of at the start of the nodes being in Leo and Aquarius on August the 21st. So again, we're being pulled to all of that. And then the full moon in Capricorn is about being your own authority and kind of standing and making something manifest and real and mastering something for yourself. It's often referred to as, our institutions and the patriarchy, and it is all that too. But at an individual level, it's about standing in your own power and creating your own expertise and owning your expertise and your own authority. And Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, and it's conjunct the moon on the full moon tomorrow. And of course, a full moon is an opposition to Cancer, which is the family, which Jen also mentioned with the number 6, which is and it's about moving towards this nurturing, bringing in this family as a whole, but creating your own structures to support your family as well. That's another one that comes up for me. I've had this thing running around my head for the whole year, when I look at the energies of the whole year, about it becoming more self-sufficient, going back to more village kind of life, creating your own gardens, looking after each other more at sort of a more of a family level. It just, I get very visual when I look at these energies sometimes, and I kind of have this village life thing roaming around in my head. And I know I'm an idealist and it probably won't go, but this is what we're being pulled back towards, I think, looking after each other as a family. Yeah,
absolutely. So we have the opportunity. The thing to me that struck me as you were talking is, with the sun being in Cancer, which is the moon's place, right, the moon's home, and the Cancer being about the family. But there's also that idea with the crab, it's under a rock, it's hidden, it's not always obvious. And with the sun there shining a light on the dark spaces, as well as bringing in this idea of loyalty, because so many of us have been trained and are used to being loyal to like what our family believes or the group we belong to. And this time is about changing that loyalty and going, well, what am I loyal to? Am I loyal to someone else's ideology, or am I needing to be loyal to what I believe in? Like, what are my morals? What are my focus? Where do I want to be in tribe? Some people are going to go, well, I want to have a tribe that pushes out outsiders. It's, there's going to be people who, not everyone is going to go, okay, I want that. But we have to remember the balance, right? There's choice. Right. The fact is, we are all, beings made of divine material. None of us are less than the other, although we have a system here that encourages us to point fingers or to think we're not enough. And this energy is really pushing us to make choices. Like you were saying, taking our own authority. What does that mean? I really feel like this connection here, the Saturn at 5, is about freedom. It's the energy of freedom. And what is that? What is freedom? What is liberty? It is not, I can just do whatever I want whenever I want.
Oh, no.
And, liberty is, and there's Saturn with that 5 going, if you want life, if you want a quality of life, if you want these things you've idealized, then how are you going to bring it into being? We actually have to get down and dig the soil and connect with other people and change the dynamic. Instead of blaming our family for doing something to us,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have to take that role and go, I'm choosing to be a certain way. I'm choosing to see you through the eyes of love instead of the eyes of you owe me something. You treated me badly. You owe me. It's this idea of pushing us away from this idealized world we've lived in where other people are to blame for our problems.
Mm-hmm.
We're trapped into this thinking that, wow, I'm not trapped. I'm bigger than this. Yes, there are things on the ground that are happening and will be happening that are upsetting and emotionally tugging. But with the moon being in Capricorn, this idea is like it's kind of pulling away the emotion from this and going, you know, you have to use this energy or the loving energy or whatever that is to you, this kind of Cancer energy of the moon. You have to use it in a way that will serve where you want to go. So you have to choose. You get to choose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm choosing to be in a place where I'm seeing the light of others and I'm recognizing their right to be who they are, recognizing that things were done to me, and I'm choosing to take myself out of that illusion and delusion and taking back my power.
And conversely, it's not about completely rejecting everybody else as well, because there is that still this element of it about knowing we're all connected. It's just rejecting you basing who you are based on what what others have told you are.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean rejecting the other person. That's what I yeah.
Well, we have to learn that, right? We
Yeah.
have to learn that it just because this is the thing, and this whole year and this whole experience is about separation and connection.
Mm-hmm.
Connection, the 2, the 11, connecting the divine within us, connecting us to the idea that we actually have choices, that we can choose to see people through the eyes of love or through the eyes of fear. And that connection or separation happens at every level. So we can separate ourselves from our society, from certain people, from our family that mistreated us, and we can point fingers and say, it's them. That's why my life is screwed up. Or we can say, yes, I had unfortunate or terrible experiences, or they did, but I still see them as human with choices. Like, just because we agree that we're all human and we all have a spiritual energy or divine energy doesn't give us the right to decide how other people need to do things. So it's moving away from that idea that some people are dictating how we do things into us moving into tribes that will work in community.
Exactly.
So we build the community we desire, and other people build the communities they desire.
But there's, of course, it's a full moon and it's an opposition. So the key is kind of integration. So I just want to talk about a couple of other interesting things, if that's all right, that come up for me from the astrological chart of the full moon. Is that here we have this full moon in Capricorn conjunct Saturn. Now, Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius, where we have all this energy going on at the same time with Mars. And then we also have the full moon is aspecting both Uranus in Taurus, which is the modern ruler of Aquarius, and Uranus is newly in Taurus, bringing massive changes to our values and things, or shaking up our values. It's asking us to really reflect on what they are. And then also the full moon is forming a lovely T-square to Chiron in Aries, and Aries is ruled by Mars. And Chiron is really the rainbow bridge between the transpersonal and the personal, and between really kind of looking at the bigger picture, the outer picture, which is what I mean by the transpersonal, and then looking at how you are in that bigger picture. So, and Chiron is traditionally really a healing energy, and he's right halfway in between this Cancer Capricorn energy. this standalone energy, and then this protective, family-oriented energy. So there's a lot of healing in this chart, I think, personally.
Yes, no, I totally agree with you. I think it's really fascinating that Chiron is at 2 degrees in Aries, and Aries, of course, is ruled by Mars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another indicator of where to use or how to use our energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fire, our anger is it's the reminder that the wounding is, and with the 2, it's showing us there are 2 sides. It's also about connecting. The 2 is about bringing things together or building that bridge and allowing that energy to come through, which is a very powerful reminder. It is so fascinating. Okay, so here we have this idea of learning new things, and this full moon, which has the energy of new beginnings, even though it's a full moon. And it's the first moon, or the moon, before the eclipses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the gateway moon. It's setting this intention that this is a new beginning, but it's to get to where we want to go, we have to walk through this energy. It's like, okay, this is the activation of completion, but it's also the activation of change.
Absolutely. So there's an awful lot of change in this. Of course, anything happening on the moon's nodes is a pivot point, I should point out as well. Anything, and all the eclipses, they eclipse something that needs to go and have the restart. Mars stationing on the eclipses is hugely important too. We're in a time of major shift, and it feels really uncomfortable. I see a lot of people out there feeling there's a lot more fear than I've witnessed in a long time, roaming about. And I was saying to Jen before we actually started the podcast that I just feel this disturbance in the force, and I feel that's a lot of other people's fearful energy about where we're going and things, and it's hard not to fall into that. But really, to go back to some of the other things we've said, really all you can do is focus on you. It goes back to kind of the serenity prayer, courage to change the things that you can and accept the things that you can't, because there's really only a certain amount that one person can do. And the best thing that you can change is yourself, not everybody else. Or not attempt to change everybody else is what I mean. And sorry, I had lost my thought there. So you go ahead. I had another thing to say, but I can't remember.
Everyone else, you can't remember. Maybe it'll come back to you.
Yeah, it will.
I was just, while you were talking, this is a very powerful thing, that our fear, which is normal, because this is the month we're in now, is this 17, which is about leaving a legacy. So we're beginning the journey to bringing forward the thing we desire. The number 28, which I see that Mercury also has the 28, so it's very interesting, because Mercury is the communication aspect, or our mind, how we think, and fear is generated through our mind, not the heart. And the Leo aspect, or the sun, this is the idea of where the nodes are going, right, is the heart, expanding the heart. So when we're in fear, it actually gets us moving. That's the beauty of fear, if there is a beauty, is that it and the 11, it's that reminder we have to take action, because just being in fear is too unsettling. So at some point we take the fear and we go, okay, I've got to do something. And 28, this number 28 is really interesting, because you have the 2 and the 8. And of course, the 8 has 2 zeros together. And the number 28 actually is one of those numbers that, when it comes up, it's a number of choice. You can choose to follow the truth of others and be betrayed, because that will always happen when you follow someone else, even if you're in agreement with them and you haven't really connected to yourself. You haven't brought the energy of the one, who am I, into the equation. You will always face betrayal, because you are betraying yourself. And so The 28 is that reminder that, yes, you want to work with others, but first you must know your focus. First you must know your truth. The one, it's the arrow of these new beginnings. It's this choice you're making to follow blindly or to follow with your eyes open. And I think that relates to what you were talking about, this idea of know what it is you're focused on. Your thing of you knowing your truth, reconnecting and coming from that place, living in honesty or genuineness with who you are and how you want to be treated. If you see something that doesn't reflect your values, then if you can, speak up, do something. Don't be afraid of confrontation.
Yes.
There's thing we have, like this blanket idea, if I disagree or if I create conflict or confrontation, that I'm creating a problem, when in actually that's how we bring the light in. That's how we dissolve problems, by speaking out, but doing it in a way that we can be heard.
Oh, and we could see that playing out so much on the world stage at the moment.
Yes.
With this discussion about being civil to each other. Well, you know, you can protest civilly. You can speak up civilly. You can make your point civilly. Being civil doesn't mean being passive and sitting back and not standing up for your values, which is what I think you're saying. You know?
Yes, exactly. And I think we have to really be careful, because people use words like weapons. So there's a reason, you know, many powerful people that have helped us through revolutionize who we are, whatever your level of revolution, because it begins with the individual. We speaking or living the way we want to begins with us rebelling against the system that's holding us hostage. And civil disobedience is one of the things that many of these revolutionaries have brought out. Be disobedient in a civil way. So you have to be careful, because when people say you're not being civil, it's like, to me, what is civility? It's about civilians, right? Who we are. We're living together. How do we live together? If we all lie, it's like we go in and we close the doors. We're all polite to one another. That we go in, we close the doors, and we beat our children. Then, you know, that's like, oh, we're all being civil because we're hiding the truth. That's not civility. It's lies. Those are lies. And they are ways words can, you know, but I think if you get a gun and you shoot someone for disagreeing with you, you beat them, that's not being civil to me. Civility is, I want to hear what you have to say. I'm going to give you room, time, say what you have to say, and I'll answer. Even if I yell and shout, it's okay. I'm not hurting you, right? I'm not attacking you.
And it's also, you know, it's fine, you know, protest is civil. You know, if you stand, I really don't get some of the narrative that's going on at the moment about, you know, it's not okay to ask a public servant to leave your personal restaurant, politely, may I add, and comp per meal because you disagree, because we pay these people. And that to me is civil disobedience. That's a way of giving your voice without attacking and without hurting them. You know,
yes.
How else are we? You know, you might not agree with that particular method, and it's just an example to me. I'm just saying, you know, what are people supposed to do? How are they supposed to disagree with the actions of people?
Well, exactly. You know, this is so interesting because to me, when I wrote my book, bringing this up, there was a part that I created in the book called something, the Bahaha, I don't remember what it was. But basically it was this idea that every time a woman gets out and says something, like she stands up and she's arguing, then the typical response is, oh, look at her big butt, or look at her terrible hair, or where did she get it flows. And what happens, and why I bring this up, because I think it's the same thing. When we hear words like civility, you're not being civil, it creates that sense of shame in us, like, oh, I have to defend myself because we're listening to someone else's truth. They're saying we're not being civil, but we get to decide what's civil for us. So the point is about this thing, when we're attacking a woman and saying, oh, look at her big butt, or the idea is to take her away from the point she's focused on and the truth she's bringing out, or whatever, leadership, and getting her back, is saying, feeling ashamed and uncomfortable, so she'll shut up and go away. So these are just tactics, right? It's a strategy and a tactic. Let's disarm people who say that they really care about other people by calling them out and attacking them and saying they're not that.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's just, we have to begin to think bigger. We cannot let somebody else tell us what civility is.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and I'm not saying that means we can go out, because there's the whole point. Civil disobedience is, that expression is about doing it with civility. So it proves that it is possible.
Without civil disobedience, women wouldn't have the vote and many other things. So, you know,
Yes.
But to bring it down, not to the bigger picture of politics necessarily, it's the same in your own life. It's speaking your truth without attacking the other for who they are, really, is what civil disobedience is.
That's right. It's recognizing you have rights. And this is not, you know, we can take it to politics or any level, but it's the basic human level of understanding the power of who we are and living that if we have an idea that we want to express, or a belief that we believe in, we need to be able to express it, even if the collective is not in agreement. It is how everything changes. It's how women got to go to work. You know, it's that recognition, like, oh, my family doesn't believe in art, but I want to be an artist. So I'm going to go and study art, right? That's civil disobedience.
Yeah. Or like, well, I can't remember your exact background of how you came here, but I'm the one who left the home and travelled and moved away, and I've been seen as disobedient and for taking the grandchildren away, basically. But you know, I'm
the mold.
Yeah, I broke the mold. I'm living the way I choose to live, and I'm not attacking anybody to do it. So that's a form of disobedience as well, just breaking the mold. Yes. And if any, I've remembered what I was going to add to my point earlier, that if people on the call who are listening to the podcast wonder why this is playing out so much here in the USA, it's just a reminder that the moon's nodes for the USA are being affected. And also we've got quite a lot of Cancer energy in the USA chart, which is being affected by the full moon too. So it's playing out on the world stage, if you like, or on the USA's stage. But it's always as without, so within. These themes are being played out in our personal lives. We can look at what's happening at the macro level as an example of really what's going on in our own smaller world. And I always see it as a good way to reflect on what's happening in your own life and your own world.
Yeah, well said. And I do think, for me, a lot of this is about the 2 energy. I was just looking that besides Chiron being at 2 degrees, I believe Pluto is at 20. So there is that energy there that is about making things real, or shifting how we communicate and how we collaborate. And
I do want to mention Ceres too.
Yes.
So Ceres is Demeter in the myth. For those listening, she lost her daughter Persephone to Pluto in the underworld, and she right now in the astrological chart for the full moon is at 29 degrees of Leo, which is exactly conjunct where the eclipse was last August 21st. And that's an 11, which is another 2. And
Exactly. I was looking at her, so I'm glad you brought her up. And I think this is really important to understand the role of Ceres in all of this.
she's hugely important. Yeah.
Exactly, because she's representing as some of the other more familiar, but these are the powerful female forces that get to go to those places, those dark places when you lose your daughter and, you know, all of those kinds of things. Those are dark places to go when you have something of value, which is having an experience you don't agree with. That's something that changes you. And this is what this is all about. This time we're in, on your own personal journey, as well as in the bigger picture, is about the choices you're making. 2 is, again, the choices. It's also about understanding the difference between setting boundaries and being a doormat. Because a lot of times we equate, and that whole thing with the civility discussion is about this. It's about saying to people, your actions don't suit me, so do what I say, which is the doormat response. Whereas, you know, here we are with the myths reminding us that, and Demeter, that's an aspect of time, right? It's reminding us that the time is moving, just as Saturn, father of time, right? It's that same aspect of how do we want to use our time? How do we want to show up? How do we want to recognize ourselves as being doormats or people who have boundaries? Yes, I agree with you, but I got to have my own boundary about what this word means to me or what this action means. And regardless, we're being pushed into a place where we have to make hard choices. We just can't make soft choices anymore.
And Ceres also represents grief and loss and all those kind of themes, but also seasons and coming in, bringing and what's the word I wanted to give? Compromise to a degree. She had to come to a compromise in the end to have her daughter for half the year with her, and half the year below with Pluto in the underworld, if you like. So, you know, there's a lot of healing within that Ceres image there. And I think it's very significant that she's on the point of the eclipse that was last August, because we've seen so much change in all our lives since that point. So I would invite people to think back, to help them personally, to think back to what changed for them on that eclipse. I know that things changed for me dramatically. It was like a whole portion of my life did completely get eclipsed to a degree.
That's a good point. I wanted to also bring in the aspect of kindness. 2 is the number of kindness. And it does remind us, like we're in the 11, like we have a choice. Like even in grief, we can choose to lash out, and remembering that this with the whole Mars and South Node thing going on here, the Chiron thing, that this is about our wounding. So we get to be kind to ourselves. You know, I really think people that are listening, if you can learn to be kind to yourself, you can really help yourself move away from wanting someone else to give you something that they're not wanting to give you, and finding that within yourself and being kind to yourself leads you to having compassion for others. It's that recognition. I can choose to be angry. I can choose to put up a wall. And this is personal stuff. Like whatever we're doing personally radiates into the world. It's that energy that then becomes the energy of the world we live in. So the more we can recognize, like, wow, somebody who I don't agree with is really angry, and that's okay. I don't have to solve their problem. We've been raised, especially as women, to solve people's problems. Like, oh, they have a problem, let me fix it. And maybe that's our job, to go and, you know, solve some problem. But the bigger picture is being kind to ourselves and solving our own problems. What do we need to feel more compassion for ourselves, to feel more creative. Because this time as well, remembering with the Capricorn, is for us to express our gifts. We're here to express our gifts. So how do we get to that place where we're not all wounded and thinking about all the stories that happened to us, and we're actually embracing this idea of being who we are? So for listeners, I think the idea is, what creativity, what action of creativity can you do to kind of find that peace within? Because when you take care of your own needs, you don't feel so needy, and you're not looking so much for someone else to fix your problem. And the beauty, you don't feel that incredible urge to tell other people how to fix their lives.
And I think a big part of this, and it's another theme of Ceres, along with the grief and loss, is the forgiveness. And the forgiveness starts with yourself. So whatever you can do to help you, start with forgiving yourself for anything. And that doesn't mean that you have been this awful sinner. Self-forgiveness is, forgiveness for having sat in your wound and having blamed other people in the past. It's gone now. It's forgive yourself for it and move forward. Because you're human, we're learning, we're here to evolve and progress, and it's part of, Jen's talked about sitting in this past of, so and so did this to me, but we also have to forgive ourselves for sitting there and thinking, oh, so and so did this to me. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's such a huge thing when we can just come back and go, okay, what do I need? Because so much of this stuff is about our personal needs. What do I need to know so that I can heal? And most of that is about the kindness to self, like knowing I'm worth loving.
Yes.
And feeling that sense to yourself, or knowing that all the things we call mistakes here, like we have this whole stuff going on, like, oh, you did that wrong, you're wrong, and it just kind of creates more wounding. We realize, like, oh, failing or making mistakes we're supposed to. There is actually no such thing as a mistake. It's all just part of the process. It's just an experience. And when we can go, oh, I'm having an experience, I'm not a bad person because I'm having this experience.
It just is, and you just learn from it, and you might make a similar mistake again, but you will have learned something from the past so-called mistake.
Exactly. But even if you do, like when you learn something,
if you do it,
you're always going to make mistakes, right? Because you don't know.
And it's okay if you slip up, so-called, again. It's okay. We're in an evolutionary spiral of unfolding, if you like, of learning all the way. So, yeah.
And accepting. I think the bigger part about learning is understanding this is a journey. We're just here to enjoy and experience. We are here as expressing as the divine through ourselves by being. So whatever we choose to do, it's okay. Just enjoy it. Be in that space. Just revel in the thing you're doing. If you have some issue and you enjoying it and you love it, do it. Don't make yourself wrong around it. Just recognize that you're the one choosing this path. No one else is forcing it on you. Yes, people can say you have to do this, and sometimes we do have to. You're in a job, you have to do it. You want something, there's certain steps you have to take. You may be trapped in a situation. However, you can still go beyond your small mind thinking into the heart. How am I interpreting this experience? And I get to choose. I can interpret this is just an experience I'm having. It's not a punishment or a revelation about I'm a terrible being. It's just an experience. So it just lightens the whole way of living, because we go, oh, I'm in choice. I'm actually choosing this, and I'm choosing to say it's great, even though it may not be the best, right?
Exactly.
It's our projection of what we think it is that can move us forward or hold us trapped.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say one thing that came up is the interesting thing is that the word sin, the actual meaning of the word sin is missing the mark.
Yes.
So when people talk about sinning, what they're talking about is I missed the mark. I didn't do it. And when you think about that, I'm throwing an arrow, because remember we have that 20, 28, the 10, the 1, that's the arrow, the focus. I'm focusing on something. When you're learning to throw the arrow, you're going to miss.
Yep.
And you just keep going. You got to keep doing it until you get to it, right?
And even then, when you get to it, you're still going to miss the mark.
Exactly, right?
Exactly. There is no kind of arriving with this stuff, to be quite honest. It's not, there is no, you're there, you've got it all figured out. You've got it all. And that's okay too, because it's an experience, as Jen said. Life is an experience, and we're evolving the whole time.
Yeah, and we have destinations that we arrive at, and we sit there for a few days or a month or a year or 10 years, and then we have to get up and go somewhere else. Yeah. So it's okay, right? And if we see the bigger picture, we don't have to get so serious about every moment. Like really, this is about joy. When you express who you are, you take up a creative activity. So at least you have control over that, the joy you feel when you're expressing whatever you're learning.
Or whatever brings you joy. And that is the Leo North Node, is about living your joy or your heart's desire or whatever you want to call it. And that, people go, well, I have to do this and I have to do that. Just find your joy for 2 hours a week then.
Exactly. That's a great point. That, it doesn't have to be all the time. But the truth is, you can inch along because it's more about your state of mind, about what you're doing. And the interesting thing is the 6, the other aspect, or the shadow aspect of the 6 is the martyr. When you do the things you don't want to do, and you really don't have to do. It's not like, I want to get to that town over there. I have to walk in the steps to get there, right? A lot of times we say, I have to do something when we don't have to. But we're doing it because we think we're supposed to. And we'll look good, or people won't love us. But, it really doesn't matter what other people, if they love us, they don't love us. We can't make them love us or do anything. So the idea of the 6 is that we only do service with love. And that changes everything.
It does.
Just do what you want. Tired, say I'm tired. No, this is a great opportunity. I'm not interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes a stronger tribe. Remember, we started out with this idea, this thing is about building tribes. You're not going to live happily if you go in a tribe and you just agree with everyone.
Right? Goodness, no.
I need to do that. But I'm so unhappy. Right?
Exactly. Well, I think we've probably about covered the whole chart. I'm just looking to see if there's anything that I do want to mention that now Mars has gone retrograde, everybody, as we speak, on the recording. So we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets retrograde. We are soon going to have 6 planets retrograde, and that is making for an interesting summer. And bear in mind, we don't count the sun and the moon really as planets. So that leaves only Mercury. Well, Mercury is going to go retrograde. Venus is not going retrograde yet. Basically, and Uranus. Uranus is not going retrograde yet, but he will too soon. Either way, we're going to have an interesting few weeks. So I hope you'll subscribe to our podcast, because we're going to be coming back. We're going to be doing 2 a month, at least for the time being. We'll be discussing the eclipses as they're coming up in detail. They're pretty massive, particularly the blood red moon that is on July the 27th, right in the middle of the 3 eclipses. That's actually, I think it's going to be fully eclipsed for like about a minute and a half, which is really quite a long time for an eclipse. And when the eclipse lasts longer like that, that's quite significant. And when it's total as well, which this one is. So we've got a lot coming up. So I don't really have anything else to say about this particular full moon. We do have a couple of things before our next call. Uranus is going to be, let me just go to that and tell you what's coming up. Mercury square Uranus in 4 days' time. That's going to be a bit of, there's going to be something, I think, coming out of the blue, messages out of the blue for that one. That's going to be quite interesting. That's from Leo to Taurus. That could be something to do with the financial markets, which are becoming a bit volatile. And then we have Mercury conjunct the North Node in a week's time. And that's going to be another pivot point. So.
Yes, very interesting. There's one aspect here of the Venus at 16 degrees in Leo and Neptune at 16 in Pisces. That kind of relationship, which is very interesting. 16, I did want to mention this because this is important. 16, which makes us 7, is a number of lightning strike intuition, where we must pay attention to the signals around us, like really start to pay, like what's happening, because 16 is the tower where things start to shift, like whatever we're looking at that is we're kind of worshipping is coming down, it's taking its turn, it's falling to the ground, and new things are rising to be illuminated. And you know, Neptune is not only our psychic powers, which are increasing, right? There's that, and it's that thing of choice, of being able to see through the muck, and you know, that aspect of Venus, which
and that's
yes.
And that's an uncomfortable aspect between the two of them too, called the inconjunct, and that's often described as an itch that has to be scratched. So combine that with what Jen was saying about the energies.
And what's even more interesting is we're moving into the 7th month. Now, the 7th month, July, is the integration month, because now we've moved past the halfway mark.
Yeah.
And we have all the things we've planted and seeded. Now we're kind of looking at it and going, okay, what do I want to make of what I've created? And we are in that space now of that, right? This idea of challenge, beauty, or whatever you think of Venus, whatever you think she is, but she's also, debt is part of her makeup, right? It's not just money, there's debt involved. And so payback time, right? It's using our intuition to, how do we use beauty? How do we use the resources we have to illuminate what is trapped or dark?
Yeah. Interesting times. So
indeed, fascinating.
I hope all of you out there in podcast world are kind of coping with all this energy. So, like I said at the start, I'm feeling a lot of fear in the force, if you like, with all that's going on in the world, and know that really, you know, I'm not suggesting, as we've discussed, that you shouldn't civilly be disobedient either at a public or your personal level, but really the fear is false evidence appearing real, because we'll be okay. It's all as it's meant to be.
And I think also we have to begin to understand that the thing about fear is that we often mistake it's emotion, right? We often mistake the emotion that's coming up as something to be afraid of, because it's taking us into the unknown, which is what the 11 is about. And this experience, Uranus, it's all about the unknown. So we haven't experienced it. So of course there's going to be emotion, but I believe this emotion that we're feeling is excitement. There's
Mm-hmm.
very little difference between fear and excitement. Most of us name excitement as fear.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is that, you know, we can't stop what's happening. So we
No.
have to find a way to understand that, like you say, Lou, we're going to be fine. But even better than fine, when we let the light into the dark, which if you think
Mm-hmm.
of being dark, if you bring the light in, you recognize you're a divine being, that you connected to the universe or source or God, whatever you call it, that's your place you can go and connect to. You know, make time
Mm-hmm.
every day, a few minutes, meditate, whatever it is that takes, walk, take a walk, whatever it is that takes you back to recognizing the power of your being that is so beyond just a physical body, and the excitement of being able to activate things through your body, your spirit through your body, is immensely wonderful. That's why the creativity is such an exciting thing. Begin
Mm-hmm.
to make something, do something. It doesn't matter what it is, but that will focus you and help bring more positive excitement to the table.
Yeah. Yep. I think we both learned that from an Alexander technique teacher as well. Oh, and from other things. But how to, often the fear is kind of like you're holding the butterflies trapped in your gut. If you imagine allowing the butterflies to fly free around you and feel it as excitement, then it moves the energy a lot better. I learned that from Sharon anyway. We both worked with somebody called Sharon for a while.
And the thing that comes to mind is, for me, what helps me is I remember to say something like, I have everything I need. Right now, I have everything I need, and all is well. This is the thing, is that's reminding myself I'm connected. Breathing, the breath, just taking a breath and opening your heart, or imagining your heart is expanding, and reminding yourself, I'm okay, all is well, everything's going to turn out okay.
Yeah.
You know, whatever, problems come up. We can't deal with it until it comes up. When it comes up, we may stir in fear for a little bit, and then we have to take action, and we do.
Yeah. So find a kind of tool or a mantra that works for you. We've given you a couple of ones there. There are others, but whatever works for you, to kind of realize that this fear can be felt as excitement, and to feel this comfort that really we do have everything we need. There's good questions to ask as well, like, really, what is the worst that could happen? Keep asking it. What is the worst that could happen? People go through horrendous things, and they come out the other side, shall we say, or they come through it with ease. Because what is the worst? You can continue asking it. It's an interesting question if you keep going. What is the worst that could happen?
Exactly, especially if you ask with curiosity and
exactly, not a fearful one is the worst. This is a curious exercise. Yeah.
Exactly. The other aspect is, if we haven't done something like we've mentioned a few times, it's the unknown, we will have some emotion around it because we're thinking we're supposed to know it. And that's the beauty of the unknown, is we don't know what's coming. So we can approach it with excitement. I'm excited about going through this adventure.
I'm curious to see what it will bring.
Exactly. It's an adventure. Think about this. Your soul is so excited right now to have this adventure, to be alive, to be in the moment. This is what this is about. That's what real living is.
It is.
Present in this moment.
Exactly. Okay, well, I think I've said everything I would like to say about this. I'm hoping you will subscribe to our podcast. We're on iHeartRadio now, as well as iTunes, and anywhere else that you can find podcasts. I don't actually know all the places, so it just goes out to all these places.
Awesome.
So
Technology.
I'm sure if you Google Weirdly Magical with Jen and Lou, you will find it, or just search it on iTunes and get subscribed so that you don't miss an episode.
Yes, I have one last thing I want to say, and that's to me that's coming up is the word communication. This is all about communication, the aspect of communicating what you desire,
Yes.
asking for what you want, letting people know there are things you don't want. It's getting clearer about that. And all these things we've talked about are really about developing your own voice, being able to communicate more clearly.
Yeah, exactly. Righto. Well, I'm going to leave it there for me. So it's goodbye from Lou.
And it's goodbye from Jen.
And thank you all for being with us.